People ask the wrong question about energy. They say, why do I feel tired as I get older? As if energy were a battery that just leaks with time. But nothing in physics works that way. Energy doesn't disappear. It moves. It transforms. It gets locked up in places you no longer notice. So if you feel drained, the interesting question isn't where did it go? It's where did you put it without realizing it? Because nature is very strict. If you don't know where the energy went, it means you stopped tracking the system. And that's where aging fools people. One energy is not lost. It's redirected. In physics, losing energy doesn't actually happen. That idea only exists in casual language. In reality, energy follows strict accounting rules. It must go somewhere, always. When a system seems weaker, it's not because energy disappeared. It's because the energy spread into places where it can no longer do useful work. That's dissipation. Take a moving object. At first, its energy is obvious motion. But introduce friction, and the energy doesn't vanish. It turns into heat, vibration, microscopic noise. The system still has the same total energy, but none of it is helping the object move anymore. Human life behaves the same way. When you're young, your energy is concentrated. Even if you waste it, it's wasted in one direction. You obsess over something, you chase one goal, you throw yourself into experiences without splitting your attention 100 ways. That concentration matters more than efficiency. As you get older, something subtle changes. Not the amount of energy, but how it's distributed. Your energy starts leaking into maintenance tasks you never consciously chose. You think ahead constantly. You replay conversations. You worry about how you're perceived. You manage expectations. You suppress reactions instead of resolving them. None of these things feel dramatic. That's why they're dangerous. Each one takes a small amount of energy. So small you don't notice it leaving. But together, they create friction, the same kind that slows physical systems down. You're not exhausted because you're doing too much. You're exhausted because too much of your energy is being spent preventing things instead of creating things. Preventing mistakes, preventing judgment, preventing discomfort, preventing instability. That's not rest, that's resistance. And resistance is where usable energy quietly dies. The cruel trick of aging is that dissipation feels like maturity. It feels responsible. It feels controlled. But from a system's point of view, it's inefficiency. Your energy didn't leave you. You scattered it across too many invisible drains. Until the system feels heavy, slow, and dull, not because it lacks energy, but because it can no longer apply it. That's the first truth people miss. And once you miss it, every solution you try will be aimed at the wrong problem. True maintenance costs increase with age. Every system has a maintenance cost. This isn't philosophy, it's engineering. A new machine runs with minimal effort, few adjustments, little upkeep. Most of the energy goes directly into output. An older machine can still work, but a larger portion of its energy is spent just keeping it running. Human beings are no different. When you're young, you don't spend much energy maintaining who you are. Your identity is loose, your future is undefined. Your mistakes don't need elaborate explanations. You act, react, move on. As you age, structure builds up. You accumulate roles: professional, partner, parent, authority, example. You accumulate expectations, consistency, reliability, stability. You accumulate narratives. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what people expect from me. Each layer feels reasonable on its own. But together, they create a hidden cost. You now spend energy maintaining coherence, making sure today's actions match yesterday's identity, protecting your image, avoiding contradictions, justifying past decisions. That maintenance runs constantly in the background. It's not dramatic. It's not painful, but it's expensive. People think aging should make life simpler because you know yourself. That's backwards. Knowing yourself means you're now responsible for not breaking the character you've built. And characters are fragile. So energy goes into control instead of exploration, stability instead of curiosity, preservation instead of expansion. This is why many people feel tired even on easy days. They're not tired from effort. They're tired from self-regulation, holding back reactions, choosing words carefully, managing impressions, suppressing impulses that once flowed freely. None of this produces visible results. It just keeps things from falling apart. And here's the part most people miss. Maintenance energy does not feel like energy expenditure. It feels like normal life. So people try to fix their exhaustion with sleep, breaks, or motivation while ignoring the fact that most of their energy is being consumed just to remain themselves. A system that spends most of its energy on maintenance has very little left for growth. That's not a failure of age. That's a system overloaded with unnecessary structure. And unless something changes, every year adds more weight, not because life gets harder, but because the cost of staying the same keeps rising. That's the second drain. And it's far more dangerous than people realize because it hides behind responsibility. 3 attention leaks are the real exhaustion. Most people think energy disappears because the body weakens. That's a convenient story. It avoids responsibility. In reality, the first thing that collapses with age is not strength, not intelligence, not even motivation. It's attention. When you're young, attention is narrow and aggressive. It locks onto something and stays there. Time disappears because the system is efficient. One target, one stream of energy. That's why young people can work obsessively, learn quickly, and recover fast even while abusing their bodies. Their attention is concentrated. As you age, attention fragmented. Not because you can't focus, but because you're tracking too many things at once. You monitor consequences. You simulate outcomes. You manage relationships. You keep mental lists running in the background. You leave tasks half-finished so you can respond to the next demand. Each open loop consumes attention, and attention is not infinite. Every time attention splits, energy follows it, not metaphorically, functionally. Your nervous system stays partially activated everywhere instead of fully activated anywhere. That creates a constant low-grade load. You're never fully resting. You're never fully engaged. That middle state is where exhaustion lives. People call it mental fatigue, but that's misleading. The mind isn't tired, it's overextended. Imagine trying to light 10 fires with one match. None of them burn properly. That's what fragmented attention does to energy. The tragedy is that modern life trains this fragmentation and then blames aging for the result. Notifications, obligations, social monitoring, self-comparison, background anxiety about time and relevance. None of these existed at this intensity before. So people feel older, not because time passed, but because their attention is constantly leaking energy into places that never pay it back. Here's the brutal truth. Energy doesn't come from rest alone. It comes from depth, deep focus, deep engagement, deep presence. Without those, even rest becomes shallow. And when attention never settles, energy never accumulates. That's why people can sleep 8 hours and still feel depleted. They never stopped spending energy. They just stopped noticing where it was going. This is the third drain, and it's the one almost no one fixes, because fixing it requires saying no, closing loops, and accepting that you cannot carry everything. Most people would rather feel tired than make those cuts. So they age faster, not in years, but in usable energy. That's the cost of attention leaks. And it compounds. 4, you spend energy preventing pain instead of creating. At some point, the goal quietly changes. When you're young, you spend energy trying to make something happen. You create, explore, test limits. Pain is a side effect, not the focus. As you age, without noticing, energy gets rerouted. You start using it to avoid pain instead of produce value. Avoid embarrassment. Avoid instability. Avoid disappointment. Avoid being wrong. Avoid standing out. Each avoidance feels rational, responsible, mature, but from a systems perspective, it's catastrophic. Creating something costs energy once. You build it, release it, and move on. Avoiding something costs energy continuously. You must monitor, adjust, anticipate, and restrain yourself at all times. That's an infinite drain. People wonder why they feel busy but stagnant. This is why. Their energy is fully allocated, but none of it is producing momentum. Avoidance creates tension without output. And tension is expensive. The mind stays alert. The body stays guarded. The system never relaxes because the threat is never resolved, only postponed. This is why people feel tired, even on days when nothing hard happened. They weren't working. They were bracing. Bracing uses energy without progress. There's another subtle cost here. When energy is used primarily for avoidance, curiosity disappears. Risk feels dangerous instead of interesting. Creation feels optional instead of necessary. That's not wisdom. That's contraction. A contracting system feels safe but weak, stable but dull, protected but exhausted. People mistake this for aging. It isn't. It's a life spent defending a version of yourself instead of expanding it. And the longer this pattern runs, the harder it becomes to reverse, because the system learns that safety comes from shrinking, not from strength. That's the fourth place energy goes. Not into building, into preventing. And prevention, over time, quietly empties the system. 5 unasked questions drain you silently. An unanswered question is not neutral. In any system, uncertainty requires energy to contain it. That's true in physics, engineering, and the mind. When something is unresolved, the system keeps it active in the background, not consciously but functionally. As people age, they collect unanswered questions the way machines collect wear. Not because they're careless, but because asking them feels dangerous. Questions like, did I choose the right path? Did I wait too long? Did I trade potential for security? Am I living my own life or maintaining a role? These questions don't scream, they whisper. And because they're uncomfortable, people don't answer them. They suppress them. Suppression is not free. It takes energy to hold uncertainty down. The mind must constantly redirect attention, justify decisions, and reinforce narratives to keep those questions from surfacing. That costs more energy than clarity ever would. Clarity, even painful clarity, stabilizes the system. It resolves tension. Ambiguity keeps tension alive indefinitely. That's why people can feel tired. Even when their life looks settled, the surface is calm, but underneath, the system is vibrating with unresolved meaning. Every suppressed question creates background noise, not loud enough to notice, not quiet enough to ignore, just enough to drain. People think exhaustion comes from doing too much. Often it comes from not deciding, from leaving things half acknowledged, from living with internal contradictions that never get examined. And the longer those questions remain unasked, the more energy they consume, because the system must work harder to keep them buried. This is why honest reflection often feels relieving even when it hurts. You're not adding weight, you're removing tension. Most people avoid that relief because they mistake discomfort for damage. So they keep paying the energy cost of unanswered questions year after year until fatigue feels permanent. It isn't. It's just unresolved. That's the fifth drain. And it operates in silence, which is why it's so effective at emptying people without them knowing why. 6, routine without curiosity becomes entropy. Entropy is often misunderstood. It's not chaos. It's not decay. It's the natural tendency of systems to lose usable energy unless effort is applied to keep them organized. Nothing escapes it. When people age, entropy doesn't show up as disorder. It shows up as repetition without engagement. You wake up, you execute familiar motions, you complete tasks, you survive the day. Everything functions, but nothing sharpens. Routine itself isn't the problem. Systems need repetition to remain stable. The problem is routine without curiosity. Curiosity is what reorganizes energy. It pulls attention back into focus. It turns repetition into learning instead of erosion. Without curiosity, every repeated action costs a little more energy than it gives back. That's entropy at work. People mistake this slow drain for aging because it happens gradually. No single day feels disastrous, but the system weakens over time. Life becomes efficient but lifeless. The mind stops asking questions. The body moves without awareness. The days blur together. Nothing breaks, but nothing builds either. This is why people say time is moving faster as they get older. It's not time, it's lack of differentiation. When curiosity disappears, experiences stop forming distinct memories. Without distinct memory, life feels compressed, shortened, drained. Energy doesn't just fuel action. It fuels meaning, and meaning requires attention, novelty, and engagement. A routine that once supported growth now accelerates decay because the system no longer invests energy into maintaining quality, only continuity. This is why some people age sharply and others fade quietly. Not because of intelligence, not because of genetics, because one system resists entropy with curiosity and the other lets repetition hollow it out. Curiosity doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't require reinvention. It requires noticing, questioning, refining. Without that, routine becomes a slow leak, and energy doesn't disappear. It spreads thin until nothing feels alive anymore. That's the sixth drain, and it's mistaken for just how life is, far too often. 7, energy returns when responsibility becomes voluntary. There's a difference most people never examine. The difference between responsibility that is assigned and responsibility that is chosen. They look identical from the outside. Same duties, same effort, same outcomes. But energetically, they are opposites. Assigned responsibility drains. Voluntary responsibility concentrates energy. When people are young, responsibility often feels chosen even when it isn't. There's novelty, possibility, a sense that effort leads somewhere. As people age, responsibility accumulates. Roles solidify. Obligations become fixed. At some point, effort stops feeling connected to intention. You're doing things because they must be done, not because you would choose them again. That shift is subtle, but the system feels it. When responsibility feels imposed, the mind resists, not openly, but quietly, through fatigue, through apathy, through a constant sense of drag. Energy isn't gone. It's being spent fighting meaninglessness. Voluntary responsibility changes the physics of the system. When you consciously choose, this is worth my energy, something reorganizes. Attention aligns, friction drops, waste reduces. The same task costs less energy, not because it got easier, but because resistance disappeared. This is why people can be exhausted doing nothing meaningful and energized doing something difficult. Effort isn't the problem. Misalignment is. Aging doesn't steal energy. Living under unexamined obligations does. Most people assume they can't choose anymore, that the structure is fixed, that the system is locked. That's rarely true. What's fixed is their assumption that choice is gone. The moment responsibility becomes deliberate again, even in small areas, energy begins to return. Not dramatically, not instantly, but measurably. The system stops fighting itself. And when that happens, age becomes irrelevant. Because energy responds to coherence, not time. That's the final truth. Energy doesn't belong to youth. It belongs to systems that make sense. And the moment yours does again, the drain stops. So if you're waiting for energy to come back on its own, it won't. Not because you're broken, not because you're old, but because energy doesn't respond to time. It responds to structure, where attention goes, what you maintain, what you avoid, what you leave unresolved, what you repeat without curiosity, what you take responsibility for without choosing. Nothing here is mysterious. If your energy feels gone, it's because it's busy elsewhere doing work you never meant it to do. Fix the system, and the energy reorganizes. Not magically, predictably. That's how nature works. And you are not exempt from its rules.